Hello and welcome to the Pixie Dust Designs YouTube channel. My name is Lynn, or LV Handcrafted, here on YouTube, and today I am going to craft with the Fox Heart gift box die set, which is a new release, and this is the card that I'll be making. So without further ado, let's make this. Okay, so on the left here, you see all of the dies that come in this set. I won't be using them all because I'm not actually going to create the box, which is the largest die at the top there. I am instead going to just assemble the fox with this really fun heart element here. So the largest die here cuts out the square with the two hearts that fold down, and it creates a pretty neat little interactive mechanism. The die does put score lines in for you, but I always like to reinforce those score lines, especially since I sometimes use heavier weight cardstock. This happens to be 100-pound. And so it's nice if you are using a thicker cardstock to just reinforce those score lines. They are really easy to see once the die puts them in place. You do get 2 additional dies for each half of the heart, and I went ahead and die cut that twice so that the heart is decorated on the outside when this element is closed, but also when it's fully open. In the position you see it now, it will also be decorated. So if you want to do that as well, you'll want to cut out 2 sets of these hearts. And I just found some pretty pattern paper that also had some more hearts on it, so I thought that would be really adorable for this card. There's also 2 different square dies. They're the same shape, but they have a different design. So one is a plain outside edge. The other is a straight outside edge, but it has a stitched border detail on the inside, and I'll use that in a bit later. To assemble our fox, there are some really fun, easy dies to layer. The larger of the 2 dies will be your bottom layer, so that's the foundation that you're going to build things on top of, and they'll be the same for the various elements that are stackable or that have layers. And what's nice is that on those foundational layers, there are some debossed lines, so you can actually see and get a hint as to where certain elements go on top. So for example, the face does have some debossed lines that indicate where the eyes would be positioned, where the nose would be positioned, and so you will see it'll be fairly obvious how to place everything. The eyes do come with a layer that you can use for eyelashes as well, which I think is really darling. And I have cut 1 layer of white. Those are the white circles, and then there's another layer that goes on top of that that even has the little highlights in the eyes. And I think those highlights are really important because if it was just flat black circle without those additional little specular highlights, the character wouldn't look quite as alive and cute. So I love that attention to detail. And for the square, which in this position will be a rectangle or diamond, I chose the one that has the stitched border detail because I love that look, and I've picked a stamp out of my stash that is fantastic, but it's kind of long. And so I'm doing some partial stamping so that I can break out the line or the sentiment into 2 lines. And the full sentiment reads, "I love your big heart," which I think is so fitting for this fox and the heart that he's holding, or she, I suppose. And so I stamped with a clear Versamark ink, and I poured some white embossing powder over that, and I'll just take my heat gun to this panel and melt it. Anytime I'm using my heat gun, I do like to let the heat gun warm up a little bit, and that way it's nice and hot and it will melt that embossing powder a lot faster. And you are less likely to also scorch your paper that way. I'm being careful as I burnish this panel down not to run my bone folder over the sentiment I just embossed. You want to give it plenty of time to cool down before you touch it or run anything over top of it, because while it's warm, it actually could smear. So just make sure that it's nice and cooled down before you put anything on top of it. And once it's cooled completely, you'll have that really nice shiny enamel finish. The fox's head I'll use as a bit of a closure of sorts to keep the two hearts kind of secured down. And because they do, especially since I used some heavyweight cardstock, they do have a tendency to want to spring open, but just tucking that little top edge of them under the chin of the fox will help to keep them closed. And in fact, I end up adding another thin strip of doubled up foam just to have that actually hold down a little bit more securely. And it's still pretty easy to open the heart. It's a little bit tougher to tuck it back in, but once the card recipient gets it, they may not necessarily want to tuck it back in, but it's by no means hard to do. So I think that's definitely something that's up to you, because if you wanted to position the head a little bit higher to where it's not covering quite as much of the heart, then that'll make it even easier to open and close it. Okay, so then I decided to add a little sentiment, and I thought adding the word hugs would be really adorable because the fox is sort of hugging that big heart. And so I've just picked out one of the colors in the pattern paper just to bring that into this element, the sentiment. And I've die cut it a couple times and just stacked those die cuts to give some extra dimension. And I am using a word die that does have a shadow layer, so that really helps to make it legible, especially against the pattern paper, which is where I ultimately decided to place that. I thought for a moment of putting it on the inside, but I thought the bottom of the card could use a little bit of something to kind of balance out this card a little. And I wanted to add some Nuvo drops, but wasn't exactly sure where I want to put them. And when that's the case, I like to just make my drops on a paper release liner. And that way, when they're fully dry, you can easily peel them off of that liner and then just place them where you want. Here I'm adding some diamond glaze. This is sort of like a glossy accent, and it looks milky here, but once it dries, it'll be crystal clear. And it does have that effect of creating that sort of enamel glossy finish. The tough part, especially since I have decanted a larger bottle of this diamond glaze into this small bottle, is that sometimes you might get some air bubbles. So I tried to pop those as best I can, but I think there were still a couple left. But I think it's not quite as noticeable on the eyes because it's kind of where those specular highlights are. So there was a final look at my card. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial video. If you did, please consider liking, commenting, and sharing. And of course, we would love for you to subscribe to the Pixi Dust Designs YouTube channel. Thanks so much. Until next time, happy crafting and have a fantastic day. Bye.